Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today I got a fun and random episode guys this evening as last week Sega Dreamcast Info released a brand new playable prototype of Crazy Taxi during the development process before the game went gold and hit retail store shelves. And when I say this thing is mostly Chaos Taxi, I 100% mean it. It has a complete debug camera where you can do absolutely anything you want in the game, basically making it near impossible to play in all the best and most hilarious ways. And anytime we get to talk about Dreamcast and game preservation, you know I'm going to. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. Now the first thing that should be obviously apparent if you have eyes is the fact that this game has completely different camera angles, and right now we're doing this kind of chase mode where the camera is just fixed and basically follows the car wherever it is going. Sometimes it's an absolute mess, sometimes it makes amazing camera angles. It is not an easy way to play whatsoever, but it really makes me want to see someone try to speedrun this game in an alternate camera setup, just making some sort of Chaos Taxi hybrid of the Crazy Taxi original. Now the best part is this is playable on real Sega Dreamcast hardware, and you can also play it via emulation, so there really isn't any wrong way to play the game outside of not trying to test it out, because even in the intro sequence here in Engine, if you hit the Y button on the Dreamcast controller, you can switch between a ton of different camera angles, which is just a lot of fun. And it's always great to get a look at how the sausage gets made, for lack of a better term, in all of these development builds. This is about 2 months before the game went retail, and it has a lot of changes as well as a lot of different camera angles. As we start off a 10-minute run here, you can just basically hit the Y button. Now suddenly, we're drawn a little bit further back into a new camera angle that feels more like a Sega arcade racing game that gives you that kind of further away view. But we can totally Grand Theft Auto the ever-loving hell to this thing as well, like Grand Theft Auto 2 in just a moment, by setting the camera completely over top of the vehicle. It is not an easy thing to play whatsoever, but somehow it makes the game fun and fresh, even if you've played it 100 times before like I have. And going with the full top-down view feels a little bit like a mix of Grand Theft Auto or Grand Theft Auto 2, along with playing with Matchbox cars in your living room when you were a kid. Suddenly the world has a completely different scale and view, and if you hit Y again, you can actually lock the camera and just completely drive out of frame and start driving where the game isn't rendering any graphics whatsoever. And obviously a lot of this was intended for screenshots back in the day. They'd have a free or debug camera, they could position it anywhere they wanted, so when they needed screenshots for press, for magazines, or for the internet, this is how they would do it, because you would never have these camera angles in the actual game. And trust me, trying to drive around just hitting jumps is absolutely hilarious. This makes this game feel brand new in some strange ways. Some of the camera angles are definitely workable, like the hood view. You're definitely driving into traffic blind, but you can just kind of poke around and see what happens. Let's actually pick another passenger up here and just see what we can do with the game. And again, this is just a small piece of Dreamcast preservation, but you know I love preservation on the channel, and you know I love the Dreamcast. There's so many fun prototypes out there, and sites like Sega Dreamcast Info release them for everyone to enjoy. Now there's a ton of prototypes sitting in collectors' hands right now that will never get dumped, and that always bums me out, because you know if I have a prototype or other game that no one's ever seen before, it is the type of thing that I immediately share with everyone. But trying to actually drop this passenger off, I was able to do it on a completely incorrect camera angle, and that felt like an additional accomplishment. And again, I would love to see a Crazy Taxi speedrunner take on a prototype like this and try to use one of the absolutely garbage camera angles that makes the game unplayable and see how high of a score they could get. It could be an entirely new category of Crazy Taxi runs, a high score in the 10 minutes just using one of the fixed cameras. You'll see here, this one, I have a completely obscured view and don't even know where I'm going. But if you had some really good muscle memory and kind of could read the map without actually looking at it from your brain, you could probably pull stuff like this off. And again, it is still just Crazy Taxi, so you know it's going to be every bit as fun as the game that you played on the retail disc. Some of the angles are fun as well. You can kind of get a sense of how the game actually renders its graphics. Once we go back overhead, you're going to see things start clipping out or just basically being culled where they aren't on screen and don't need to be drawn. If you're not familiar with that, pretty much every single console out there will cull out polygons if the camera isn't looking at them. So you might be one street over in Crazy Taxi, but everything is completely missing graphically until it actually needs to be on screen, so it can keep down the rendering and CPU usage to make the game run as fast as possible. And just jumping right here at that weird camera angle, it just works for me. This is so much fun in all of the dumbest ways. I can't recommend enough, the next time you have a game night, just pop this prototype of Crazy Taxi in and go ahead and play it with your friends, have some drinks, and I guarantee you it's going to just be straight up laughter. But here is a quote-unquote soundtrack sample of 45 seconds of the soundtrack of Crazy Taxi that isn't licensed, just so you get a sense of what it sounds like in the weird chance you've never played this game before, and I'll be right back to show you a lot more of the changes and weird absurdity that this Crazy Taxi prototype provides. I mean, that's about as much of the soundtrack as I can let you listen to, because obviously all the music in the game is licensed and will just absolutely throw up a flag immediately. Now, if you do want to play around with this thing, I can't recommend enough either put another Dreamcast controller into port D on your Dreamcast, or if you're via emulation, make sure you have a controller set up on D as well, because there's going to be even more debug camera angles and fun you can have on that fourth controller. You can lock the camera, you can move it around in real time, you can basically set up your own Crazy Taxi screenshots however you want. And again, a lot of these features left in the game in the prototypes were for exactly that. If you needed to get a good screenshot and you wanted to make the game look quote-unquote more exciting from a different camera angle than just the behind the taxi view you would get on Dreamcast or Naomi, you use options like this so you can position the camera anywhere you wanted. It just ends up helping out, and I love that I basically got this guy to his destination right when the timer was going to run out, and the game does allow you basically to back up because you are close enough. And that's the fun thing about Crazy Taxi. We've had this game for so long now. It basically has been out for over 25 years, but there was a point in time in which Crazy Taxi didn't exist in our imaginations. We had just seen it in some screenshots and magazines, and it was still in active development, and that was this stage. So this version of the game was before anyone outside of Sega would have ever tested it or played it. And just think how big of a franchise Crazy Taxi is. Sure, we haven't gotten a new game for a long time, but Sega is working on one, so I feel like soon we're going to be able to review a new Crazy Taxi game on the channel, and that just 100% excites me, because I got this game when I was a sophomore in high school and absolutely fell in love with it, and I've been playing Crazy Taxi at least once a year, every single year since. I might only play it for 25 minutes, but I always have to jump in, make a few runs, have some fun, and then just move on with my day. So again, as a big Dreamcast and Crazy Taxi fan, it is a ton of fun to get prototypes like this. Now, do be aware the entire map is here, but some of the graphics are going to be slightly different. If you fail, some of the failure texts are going to be different as well, and in some of the challenge modes, you're going to get a completely different menu art style, so it is fun to see those small changes. But again, the big difference here is this camera angle just being absolutely ridiculous. I didn't even mean to pick up this passenger right here. I just drove headfirst into a tree because I couldn't see it coming, and now suddenly I am trying to bring him to, I believe, a church. And that's the great thing about prototypes like this. You just get to see what's going on under the hood, and you get a sense of how some of your favorite games were made. I can only imagine being in the Sega offices back in the day, knowing you were so close to releasing this, and knowing that it was probably going to be a hit because it was just absolutely fun to play. This is the type of thing that just always intrigues me. There was a point in time before anyone had ever played Crazy Taxi, and then the minute that game came out, we've had Crazy Taxi ever since, and again, still one of the best Dreamcast games ever made. So getting a new version of the game that is basically Chaos Taxi personified just 100% works for me, and I just love this top-down camera angle. Basically feels like the miniaturization of the entire world in Crazy Taxi. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me, is this something you're interested in as far as playing, or do you just like watching videos on it? Because for me, this type of stuff is just absolute catnip, but I am a huge Dreamcast fan, and you know I'm a big advocate for preservation, so it ticks both of those boxes off. And it is so easy to play. I will leave a link in the description below to the Sega Dreamcast info website, and do be aware that there is a ton of prototypes on there, not just for Crazy Taxi, but for a lot of other fun Dreamcast games, some of which I've done videos on. So poke around the site and definitely support them, because they do a metric crap ton as far as Dreamcast preservation is concerned. Every month or so, they usually come out with something entertaining, but this Crazy Taxi build is one of my favorite Dreamcast prototypes I've seen in the last few years, outside of something like the Castlevania demo being dumped and playable by all. Because it is just the Crazy Taxi you all know, love, and remember, just shown in a completely different way with some chaos camera angles to make the game unplayable but completely hilarious at the same time. But that's pretty much it. There's a new Crazy Taxi prototype out there, and I can't recommend it enough. Leave me a comment down below. If there was one prototype to leak from the Dreamcast that isn't out there yet, which one would it be for you? I would be curious. I always hope that they find more of Agartha, but I think at this point in time, all of that demo has been released, and there really isn't anything else to see. But if you follow the link in the description below, you can download the prototype version of Crazy Taxi, which I'm calling Crazy Chaos Taxi because it is absolutely chaotic in all the best ways, and you can definitely have some fun, and trust me, bring some friends. But we're done, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.